Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. Finally, we've come to the end of what has been an absolutely fucking atrocious TV show. My all-time favourite franchise, Lord of the Rings, aka Rings of Power, has been an abysmal failure. And unfortunately, episode 8 carries on with that trend. But stay tuned in the video, guys. I'll break down the full episode for you, give you the highest highlights. It doesn't get very high, and the lowest lows. It gets very low most of the time. But before we go any further, please do be aware that there's going to be spoilers ahead in this video. If you haven't seen the episode, feel free to come back at a later time. Check out the video then. And don't forget to leave a thumbs up as well, guys. Come and subscribe if you're brand new. And don't forget to hit the bell icon on the channel homepage, and you'll be notified when any other videos or content that I post immediately goes live. Episode 8, called Annoyed Alloy Wheels. It's bad. It's real bad. Stupid scenes, stupid facial features, stupid face pulling, dialogue all over the place, time jumping all over the place, events all over the place, nothing really true to the lore. Very, very small aspects are true to the lore. And even with the direction that they're going in, they managed to fuck up their own story. So yeah, happy customer once again. We start off in the Greenwood with the stranger. Bearing in mind, we do actually find out who the stranger is, and I called it. I just want to say I called it. There was a couple of things that I were thinking about that made me think it was someone else, but it's confirmed. We find out who the stranger is, and we find out who Sauron actually is in this episode as well. So in those two storylines, those two arcs, it's nice that it comes to a head, and I don't mind the way that it's been done. So more on that in a sec. So we start off in Greenwood. The stranger recalls conversations that he's had with Nori about being good. He's starting to hear, you're good, because he's still trying to find his purpose. He's still trying to find his way in the world. He follows what he thinks is Nori up to sort of like a opening in the forest that he's in. Finds out that it's actually Eminem and crew. So the cult-like people that turn up in the last episode looking for the stranger have found him. One of them disguised himself or herself as Nori, and all of a sudden they sort of come out together. There's 3 of them. They stand in front of the stranger and they say, we found you, you know, you're going to be great, you're all powerful, we bow to you, my lord Sauron. And then straight away I was like, nah, I don't think it's Sauron, I think this is a ruse. And it is. So in the beginning of the episode, we are led to believe that the stranger is Sauron. We then go into the next scene, which is Celebrimbor and Elrond talking about their failure, talking about the plan that was supposed to come into action where the elves were supposed to be saved by Mithril. What a load of shit. That's not how it happens in the books. A lot of things happen in this show that's not true to the lore, so I'm going to give up trying to compare it to the lore, even though this is a heavy lore-based fantasy with lots of scripture, lots of books, dialogue, archived material that they could have used, but they decided to go with this pile of wank that we're seeing now. So anyway, trying to contain my rage, can you tell?
You done fucked up now!
I'm actually quite happy that this series is over. This is the crazy thing. I couldn't be happier that a TV series is over. They just destroyed it. But anyway, Celebrimbor and Elrond are talking about how they failed the elves and that the way to save them was apparently to get the Mithril. It was to get Durin to hand over the Mithril. Then the elves could store their light within the Mithril or use the Mithril to become eternal, even though half of them are in Valinor anyway and they don't actually die. They just leave Middle-earth to go to Valinor where they live forever. So what the fuck do they need the Mithril for? Who knows? So they're talking about how they failed the elves. Celebrimbor then says, if only we could harness something like the sun, something that's incredibly powerful, and have it in our hands, we would be absolutely saved, wouldn't we? Elrond would be like, yeah, what a shame. So really shit writing. We then see Galadriel, who is bringing in Hellbrand for healing. If you guys remember in episode 7, he was caught up in the battle. He's been injured. She's brought him in to what I assume is Lindon, that sort of area, for elvish medicine healing. So that's all good. Then she talks about Galadriel goes on one of her weird smouldering look things again and starts reading her thesaurus and goes through all the random things that she can pull out of her ass and make it sound really intelligent. So she talks about swimming for faith and not willing to drown. She's going to swim forever, and you know, she swam through the sea, and when she jumped off that ship she knew what she was doing. She was committed to faith, even though she was ran by vengeance actually by that point. Makes no sense. Elrond then asks, what do we do? And then she says, the only thing we can do. Swim. That's literally how you get it. Celebrimbor and Hellbrand are then seen talking about Galadriel. Hellbrand is sort of like coming around from his healing, sees Celebrimbor and says, oh, where's Galadriel? And then Celebrimbor's like, well, she's around somewhere, don't worry about it. Immediately, I knew what was happening in this scene, and for those of you paying attention to what has been a Diabolical series, this is one of the things they actually get a little bit right. So Hellbrand then starts asking questions about smithing. He starts saying, oh my god, I'm in the halls of the elven smiths of Eregion, absolute legends in making rings, swords, shields. They are the best craftsmen in the world, basically. So Hellbrand's getting a little bit starstruck talking to Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor then says, yeah, you know, this is my forge, come and have a look at it. And straight away, you know, Hellbrand is fucking Sauron. If you haven't figured out that Hellbrand is Sauron, then you need to be kicked in the balls. I'm joking. But I did call it, guys, at episode 3 or 4, Hellbrand is Sauron. I did have a little bit of a moment and I thought he could become a Witch King, he could become a Ring Wraith, but no, I don't think they would give someone of that nature such a prime spot on the show, where really at this point it's all about character building, or at least it should be. So it makes sense. It makes total sense that Hellbrand is Sauron. So, spoilers, he's been asking questions throughout the whole series about how to make things. He's been spending time in Numenor. He's been asking, you know, battle tactics. He's been spending a lot of time with the enemy, which at this point in the lore is actually what Sauron's doing. At this point, he's kind of in multiple places, and I'm glad they didn't go with that, because that would have been royally screwed again. But they stuck with one character, and it's Hellbrand. And he's asking all sorts of questions, and has done throughout the whole series, about smithing, about, you know, what the enemy's doing, the enemy. He's deep in the Elven Council. He's deep in the council of the Numenorians. So he spent a lot of time in Numenor, finding out, if you remember, spending time with the blacksmith. So he's been very crafty. And to me, this was the only real story that was going to have a little bit of a payoff if it came out that he was going to be Sauron, which he is. So I'm quite happy with that. Quite happy with the story arc and how they've done it. Could have been fleshed out a little bit more, and there's going to be some gripes on it, which I'll share in a second. But on the whole, it was good. It was okay. So Hellbrand, as I said, is asking a lot of questions. Straight away, we know this is Sauron. It's not sort of confirmed, but the music's kind of like menacing a little bit, and Celebrimbor was looking at him as if to say, why are you asking so many questions? Hellbrand sort of says, oh, you know, I've just been in awe of the elves forever, and I just want to learn more. And Celebrimbor stupidly is like, yeah, come and check my forge out, I'll show you everything. Just gets stroked by his own ego, basically, and tells Hellbrand some of the secrets of the elves and how they make stuff. Celebrimbor kind of says, we're working on this project, i.e. a ring or some sort of weapon to fight against the enemy. Hellbrand then picks it up, the ore, and says, you need something that's going to split the ore out, it's going to make it stronger, i.e. mithril. So Celebrimbor, for some reason, has never been able to work this out. He just says, oh my god, that's it, you've nailed it. That's absolutely amazing, I can't thank you enough. That knowledge is great, that's exactly what I needed to know. That's exactly what I needed to do. Thank you so much, how can I ever repay you? And this is the bit where, if those of you that have read your lore, read your Lord of the Rings, your Silmarillion, you know, your Beren and Luthien, all those sort of books and tales by Tolkien, you will know this is Sauron, because he looks at Celebrimbor and then says, let's just call it a gift. And at this point in the lore, Sauron is called by the name of Anatar, which is known as the Lord of Gifts. So it's a little bit of a throwback to that, and I liked it. It was a nice little delivery, and there's a nice little, you know, a little nod to Hellbrand being Anatar / Sauron. Makes total sense, because he spent most of the series, if not the whole series, with Galadriel in his enemies' council, learning the ways of war, learning the ways of how they think, and just getting right under their skin, buying their trust, biding his time, ready for the time to announce himself. Now, there's a couple of things I had issues with. One was he just sort of gave up and announced himself to Galadriel, which is what we're going to go on to in a minute. Also, I get the whole he's playing weak thing, but they could have gone with the multiple places at once. They only went with Hellbrand. They might go into season 2 and say, oh, this guy was also Sauron, but I think they've sealed their own story now. It would have been nice to see him omnipresent a little bit, but done correctly. Also, I would like to have seen him spending more time with people, and also the scenes where he's buying their trust. So he's going around saying, you know, oh, this guy's great, Hellbrand's great, he saved my daughter, he's saved a cat from a fucking tree. Like, do you know what I mean? Just doing stuff where he's building up character, building up trust, where people actually love and respect him and have just got total and utter trust. I don't think we've had enough of those sorts of scenes where we can actually feel that Halbrand is a sneaky bastard, and he should be, and he has done a sneaky job, but I would like to have seen a little bit more of him as Anatar, aka Sauron, just spending time amongst people, getting under their skin, getting behind enemy lines basically, and being a royal spy. We didn't get any of those types of scenes, so that's a shame, and I think it's a missed opportunity for his character. But anyway, the next scene comes in. We then get a scene where we have the King of Numenor, King Tar Palantir. So, and again, those of you that know your lore, that have watched the movies, one of the Palantir stones is going to be in this episode as well. And I assume the stones are named after this king, or there's some sort of link because it shares the same name as the Palantir Seeing Stone. So he's on his deathbed, and then we see Pharazôn saying that, you know, he's going to have it. He's going to die soon. He's talking to his nearest and dearest and says, look, you've got an hour with him. Each of you need to speak to him. Each of you need to get whatever it is off your chest. Talk to him. Have a good little joke and laugh or whatever, because he's going to die, basically. We then get a scene where, I think this is pronounced right, Arian is warned by the king. She's talking to him, and then he grabs her and says, you need to do what you're here to do. We need to restore the island to the old ways, or Numenor is going to fall. So he's sort of had some foresight. He's seen the fall of Numenor. He's seen the Great Wave, even though that should have happened God knows back when. But he's seen that. And he says to her, you need to look no more, and you need to become what is meant of you. So she disappears off down into the crypts, or down into the lower levels of the palace. And we see her go up to an object which is covered by a cloth, and we can easily make out that this is the Palantir, or one of the lost Seeing Stones. So she goes to pull it off, and then the scene cuts away. So we know that she's got involved with a Palantir. She's obviously going to see things that are happening across the world. The idea is that the Palantir doesn't give you the future. It's not a foreseeing stone. It just allows you to see. So you need to have someone at the end of it with another Palantir that you can actually communicate with. It's kind of like a mobile phone. If another person's got a Palantir, they can talk, communicate and talk to each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how her story evolves in the next season. If the writing is as bad as it is in this season, you might not even hear from it again. It might just be something they completely forget to tie up, and it'll go nowhere. So, damn! But anyway, next scene is Gil-galad with Celebrimbor, giving his thoughts on making an item, and Gil-galad's like, no, not doing it. You had your chance. The great tree is dying. There's leaves falling off of it. We need to act, i.e. leave. This is another thing that's pissed me off with this episode and this series. When I first saw the trailer and I saw Gil-galad, I was like, holy shit, this is going to be amazing. He is the highest of highest kings of the elves, highest king of Noldor and all of Elfkind, and they fucking butchered his character. He's like greedy, he's menacing, he's got an alternate agenda, he's got a little bit of like nastiness in him, he's very selfish, and it's nothing what Gil-galad's like. And there's no payoff on it either. His character arc in this series is probably one of the worst. He's come out the end of it with absolutely fuck all. The scenes that he was in meant fuck all. I felt no passion towards him whatsoever. But reading the books and knowing what his story is and some of his backstory, I was like, yes, we're going to get some ace fucking storytelling in this. But we got an absolute pile of burning dog shit instead, unfortunately.
There's nothing anyone can do, there's nothing anyone can say. There's little can be done right now to make this go away. But what I could really use right now is a bacon roll and a cup of tea. I don't need positive affirmations, I need to scream and bawl. The unrealistic expectations won't help with this at all. This is shit. Well, this is shit. I'm not expecting answers because they're out of your remit.
Gil-galad is talking about the tree. He's saying, no, you've had your chance, Celebrimbor. You fucked it. You didn't, you've not done anything in good time. We have no time. We need to leave to Valinor. The elves are done, basically. We're over. We're dead. Celebrimbor then mentions that there's something he can do. He just needs a little more time. And Gil-galad's like, no, I command you to leave. He tells Galadriel, Elrond, and Celebrimbor to leave. He says, I want you gone by the end of the day. You need to pack up your shit, get on the next ship to Valinor, and get your asses out of here. So then he leaves. We then see Celebrimbor talking to Galadriel. Elrond's kind of in the background, and he's talking to him about what could have been. He said, you know, I was so close to making something pure. I was so close to making a weapon that was going to turn the tide of this war. It was going to wipe Sauron out, basically. It's going to be something that's going to really give us an edge, and we wouldn't have to go anywhere. We could stand our ground. We don't need to run and hide to Valinor and leave Middle-earth to its fate. Then he mentions that he could have made something that created power over flesh, and then Galadriel sort of looks at him and remembers that Halbrand said something of that nature in a previous episode. So Celebrimbor starts going off about how power makes him feel and how power should be the weapon against the enemy. They should fight fire with fire, all that kind of thing. And he kind of goes a little bit dark and is kind of twisted, so it's kind of hard to work out what's happening in this scene. But what I gather from it is that Celebrimbor is already bought into Halbrand's bullshit, i.e. Sauron's bullshit. He's already got a bit of a lust for power, which is kind of true to the lore. That's how Celebrimbor goes, and that's how he gets so sucked into Sauron and ends up making the rings for him. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes in the next season, because what's really stupid is that by the end of this season, nobody really, apart from Galadriel and Elrond, know that Sauron is Halbrand or Halbrand's Sauron. For some reason they didn't think to tell Celebrimbor, the guy that's been spending most of his time with Halbrand, teaching him all the things that he knows about smithing and stuff like that. You would have thought they would have told him, or Celebrimbor would have at least worked something out, that because they were talking openly about it. But anyway, makes no sense. But Celebrimbor's going into a bit of a Gollum-like state. He starts talking about how important power is and how that's the only thing that's really gonna fight them against the, you know, give them power and fight against the enemy. Galadriel clocks this, doesn't like what he says, and says, where have you heard that from? And he's like, oh, I just said it just came from nowhere. But she's heard it from Halbrand. So then she's starting to feel a little bit edgy. She's feeling like something's wrong. She's seeing that Halbrand's spending a lot of time with Celebrimbor, and they're kind of besties all of a sudden, and it's raising suspicion, as it should. We then go into the next scene where Galadriel's kind of stood watching in the background, and we see Halbrand and Celebrimbor in the forge. I quite like this scene. It was quite good. Industrial. We got lots of different panning shots. It kind of reminds me of that scene in Return of the King, where Andúril is made from the shards of Narsil, and you see the Elven Smiths remaking it. It's that sort of scene where you got the roof of the forge opening up. Celebrimbor and Halbrand are working together to make something. We don't know what it is, but they're looking to make something together, a weapon of some sort that they can use. And you've got all the anvils there, all the forges being, all the smouldering lava's being used, and it's quite good. I just liked it. It was laid out quite well. The way it was put together was quite interesting. And you've just got Galadriel sort of staring in the background like, what's this fucker up to? Just giving a dubious look. She then goes over to one of the record keepers or the librarians and says, I need the records of all the Southland lineage. So this is again a bit of a Ned Stark dig in Game of Thrones, where she's feeling that something's off. Something's really off about Halbrand. So she wants to get confirmation that he is who he says he is, basically. She wants to be able to go through the records, be able to see that he is a Southern king that left the crown, walked off and went into exile, and she's got a very cold feeling about it. So that he goes off and does that. We then see Halbrand, who is with Galadriel. He sort of comes into the scene and says, oh, thank you so much for saving me. And she's like, well, you saved yourself. You actually saved me. And he's given it that, yeah, but I wouldn't have been here without you. You've really invited me in. I've learned so much by being at your side. And it's just a weird, cold feeling about it, which she's slowly stepping back, and she's giving him the old stink eye. But he's just giving it the, oh, you've been amazing. And the music kind of goes a little bit twisted. So that builds up to the next scene. We then move into the Dwellers. I think they're called, one of them's called the Dweller, aka Eminem, aka the three amigos, the cult-like people in the gowns. They're talking to the stranger about the lands of Rune. So this is linking into what's coming next. The Great Rebellion, the Great War. And this is where the stars meet. They tell him, if you come with us, we're going to take you exactly to where you need to be, aka Mordor. We're here for you. You're the great lord. You know, we'll bow to you. We'll lick your ass, whatever you want us to do.
Hi, Matthew.
Hiya.
Do you fancy a bum?
A what?
A bum. Do you fancy a bum?
In what sense?
You know, like a bit of man-on-man action. Do you fancy a bum?
Obviously don't say that, but they let him have his moment. Then the stranger sort of builds up loads of power. All the leaves start swirling. The earth starts moving, and they can sense his power. And they're, oh my god, it's Sauron. He's amazing. They let him have his moment, and then Eminem picks up some dust, blows it in his face, and it kind of calms him down. And one of them mentions that they can bind him, they can take him to Mount Doom, and they can help him harness his power. So just as they're about to do that, we see the fucking Harfoots. So unfortunately, we've got more Harfoots than we would want in this episode. It's the B-movie comedy in this, unfortunately, and I just don't like the way they've been written in. I just don't like the way they've been put together. I don't like the character arcs. I don't care about the characters. It's just a really bad piece of writing. But anyway, I digress. So they lure the Harfoots lure two of the cult away by like wolf noises, make weird noises, and it lures them away in an attempt to then distract them, and then the others go and free the stranger, which is what they do. Lenny Henry's character gets a dagger to the gut, a nice little throwing knife. I loved it. I thought, fuck you, get out of it, piece of shit. It's bad, isn't it? You shouldn't be rooting for good characters to die in this, but this is how bad the writing is. You want these fuckers to die, and I was like, if he's gonna die, whatever. And I shouldn't feel like that if the writing was done correctly. So they go to harm Nori. Nori jumps in and says, oh my god, tries to step in and stop it. Nori's not having it and says, you know, I'm going to save him. They go to harm Nori, and then the stranger essentially goes a little bit Super Saiyan. So he remembers all the good things that Nori taught him. He remembers that he's a good guy, saves Nori, and then there's a really bad scene back and forth where Lenny Henry's character is fighting with them. They're fighting with the stranger. The Harfoots it's like a back and forth little battle. And the funniest thing is that you get the Lenny Henry's character, I think his name's Sackville or something like that, sort of crawls up to one of them in camo. He pulls the hood off. The cult guy looks down at him, and then he just goes and stabs him in the foot. It was hysterically shot. I don't think it was supposed to be funny at all, but the way it was put together, the way they acted it out, and the way the scene was delivered made me piss myself. So well done, Rings of Power. You made me laugh. Not in the right way, I imagine, not in the way you intended, but I got a laugh out of it. The stranger then comes to after Eminem becomes a pyro lord. Basically, he picks up ash and stuff. He sees the Harfoots in the trees. They start pelting rocks down at him. I think it's a him, might be a her, I don't know. And then he starts picking up ash from the ground, turns it into fireballs, and then starts blowing the fire up into the trees where the Harfoots are hiding and picking them off with rocks. So the trees are all set ablaze. The stranger then comes to, stands up, sees all the fire around him. Nori goes over and gives him one of the staffs that the guys have managed to knock off of one of the other cult members. Gives him the staff and says, we need you now. We need you to be the good guy. We need you to be who you are and follow your heart, basically. This is instantly where I knew this is Gandalf. I don't know about you guys. I always had a feeling the stranger was Gandalf. It just made sense about how he can harness fire. He ends up with the Elven Ring of Fire as well, so that's the tie-in. He also says that he's a servant of the Secret Fire and the Fellowship of the Ring, and just the way he's presented, the way he is, he's obviously a Mire. He's a fresh spirit from the light of Eru Iluvatar. He's come in, he's essentially an angel that's been sent to Earth to help fight Sauron, which is why he falls from the sky, and he learns the ways of words because he's fresh from the source, basically. Didn't like the way they did that. They should have made him very intelligent from the off, maybe a little bit delirious, a little bit clumsy, which Gandalf is throughout the whole series, but he's wise beyond his years. He's an absolute being that is thousands of years old. So for him to struggle to work out why he's there is a little bit of a weird style and choice of writing, in my opinion. But there we go. So they give him the staff. This is the bit where he says, go back to the shadow. And those of you know the iconic scene where he's fighting the Balrog and the Fellowship of the Ring. He tells the Balrog to go back to the shadow. I'm a servant of the Secret Fire, wielder of the Flame of Arnor, blah, blah, blah. Gives him the whole speech. And this is where the stranger actually says part of that speech. He says, go back to the shadow from whence you came, which is what Gandalf says to the Balrog. So the cult then sort of look over, realize that it's not Sauron. One of them says, he is not Sauron, he is the other. And one of them says, Istari, the Astari. So this is where we absolutely know it's Gandalf. The bit I didn't like, the stranger, aka now Gandalf, picks up the staff and says, I am a god, and then slams it down on the floor. I didn't like that bit. It's like, no, Gandalf wouldn't be out there greedy, in your face, bolshy with his power. He's very, very strong, beyond strong, especially when he's Gandalf the White, but he wouldn't go around flexing his biceps, if you see what I mean. He wouldn't stand there and say, oh my god, piss off. It's just the wrong choice of words, I think, for that sort of scene. I love the scene. I love the way it was delivered. I thought it was great. CGI aside, it could have been a little bit better. I just think that's not Gandalf. That's not his dialogue. Do you know what I mean? He wouldn't come out with that. So anyway, he banishes them back to wherever they've gone to. We get a nice little CGI scene where their form turns into like a moth or a butterfly, then turns into ash and death, basically. They just disintegrate and disappear. So as we know, Gandalf uses a moth in the Fellowship of the Ring to speak. He speaks to it, catches it, speaks to it, and sends it off to Gwaihir, and then Gwaihir brings all the eagles to save him from Orthanc. And it's the same way he does it throughout Two Towers, Return of the King. So that's how we know at this point, confirmation, the stranger is Gandalf. Well done, love it. Next scene is Elendil with Queen Muriel. They're on a ship, and she's basically learning how many steps to go up to get to the top of the ship, the deck. Because if you guys remember, she's now blind, she can't see. She got hit by the fire when the volcano, aka Mount Doom, erupted. She was trying to save some of the survivors in the last episode. She got blinded by the ash, and now she can't see. So she's trying to memorize how many steps to get to the top. Elendil comes down and says, there are 9, and then looks at her and it's like, okay. So there's a nice little nod, nice little Easter egg for the 9 kings of men, the ring wraiths, the Nazgul. Pretty pointless to just say there's 9 steps and then, oh, there's 9 Nazgul. Oh yeah, great. But it was like, I liked it. But they could have done it in a different way. They could have spoken about kings of men. They could have spoken about what's going to become of Numenor, and dropped the 9 into that maybe. But it just felt rushed. It felt a bit lazy. It didn't really fit the context of what was going on. But they're talking about Galadriel, Sauron, and Elendil says he's willing to pay the price to see the end of Sauron, come what may. Queen Muriel's like, come what may, and he's like, yeah, come what may. So he's on board all of a sudden. He's forgiven Galadriel. Nothing's happened in between the last episode and now, but all of a sudden, Elendil once again has done a 180, and his character is now on board with Galadriel. Makes no fucking sense, but there we go. They then arrive in Numenor, and they're all sort of like stunned, looking out at the sea, like, and the Queen's like, what is it? What can you see? What's the problem? And then Elendil says, I can't believe it. And you look out and you just see lots of black ships in the harbour. So this is a bit of a nod to the beginning of the Great War, the beginning of Sauron's reign, but also I liked this because this indicates the start of the Black Númenóreans, which is obviously where the mouth of Sauron and all that kind of stuff comes from, and Agandaur in the games. So they can go real deep with this plot if they go the right way. Please, if they go the right way and do this well, we could see some real harsh looking motherfuckers in the next season. So this indicates the split of Numenor. It indicates that a rebellion's going to happen. Obviously, we know Numenor ends up under the sea with Sebastian the Crab, but this is the end of it. This is where it all begins. So nice little tick in the box for that. We then go back to Celebrimbor and co, who are saying that they've done it wrong. They need to start again. They stop the forge and they think, busted it. Galadriel then gets a parchment from the librarian guy. If you remember, she said, I want to know the lineage of the Southern Kingdoms to try and work out who Hellbrand is, who his father is. He gives her the parchment. She disappears. We know straight away there's going to be no record of him. We know it's Sauron, but we just play along with the scene. So as she's reading it, she sort of looks shocked, steps back, and then all of a sudden he comes wandering into the scene. Says, we need to make 2 crowns. We need to make something circular. It's like, we know it's going to be a ring. We know it's going to be a fucking ring. Let's not play it down. She actually then confronts him and says, the last man to hold the crest that you appear to say is your house died years ago. You've got no heir. There was no heir after that man died. So the last true king of the Southlands died a long time ago. You've got nothing to do with him, basically. And she says, tell me who you are. He sort of then instantly, this is the bit I didn't like, instantly just says, don't know what you're talking about. She's like, I've sussed you, mate. You're not who you say you are. You're not a Southern King. Who the fuck are you? Knowing deep in her heart it's Sauron. She knew it all along. I don't know how Galadriel can get so close to Sauron and not realise it. But the way they've written it for this story is that She sort of fell for him. She fell for his charm. She fell for his spirit. And although Anatar, there you go, Anatar or Sauron is the absolute king of deception, in the story, in the lore, he doesn't do that with Galadriel. The elves are actually the only ones that are always suspicious of Sauron from the off. Even when he was Anatar, they weren't buying it. Elrond, Gil-galad, Galadriel were absolutely against him and thought, don't trust this fucker. He managed to swindle the dwarves, he managed to swindle men, but he didn't swindle the elves. But for some reason, they've done it the complete other way around in this series. So he's spending a lot of time with all races, but it seems the elves are the only fuckers that couldn't work it out, even though they are the ones in the book that worked it out first and stayed well clear of him. But there we go. Anyway, back to the scene. So she's confronting him. They have a little bit of a to-do. She asks for his name when he says, I've got many names. And this is where we know he's kind of admitting it. She goes to try and stab him with the dagger, and he grabs her hand and then sends her into some sort of illusion. She's back at the beginning of the series with her brother Finrod. They have a discussion about Finrod, about Sauron. Says he was seeking power to heal Middle-earth. And Finrod in this scene, we know it's not Finrod, it's Sauron. But he's presenting himself as her brother. Initially, she's like, oh my god, my brother. She's all excited. But then he starts talking about how Sauron's not the bad guy. About how he's trying to heal Middle-earth. He's just got a perspective on things that some people don't understand. And then this is where Galadriel says, you're not my brother. I know who you are. Get away from me. My brother's dead. You killed him. He then teleports her into another scene where they're on the raft. And they're talking about Morgoth. And she says, you're a servant of Morgoth. You're nothing like who you appear to be. Get me out of this illusion. He then basically says, it doesn't have to be this way. You're all powerful. I'm all powerful. You saved me. I saved you. We're equals. I will treat you as such. You know, you can have a future. And we get a really cool panning shot of the sea. The camera pans away from the raft, looks into the sea, and we see a shadow of Sauron in his full gear, in his war attire, if you like, in his dark armor. And next to him is Galadriel in a gown, window blowing. You don't see any facial features or anything like that. You just see the shadow outline in the sea. But what Sauron's essentially saying is, become my wife, become my dark queen, and I'll treat you with the utmost respect. You'll have unlimited power. We will rule the world, the earth, the universe. We can do whatever the hell we want. And why shouldn't we? Because we've earned it. She sort of says, no, not having it. He asks her to bind him to the light. He says, all I want you to do is bind me to your light, i.e. the eternal light in Valinor. Grant me passage to it. Because he obviously is going to go in. He's going to destroy all the gods or control the gods. Become the almighty, basically. She says, no, I'll never be at your side. There's some weird back and forth acting in this bit. The camera's right in their faces. It goes between Sauron and her. They're just having an argument. They're just throwing words at each other. But the acting is atrocious. Both sides, it's just like, what the fuck? It feels really cheesy. It feels like a school project that's been shot in media studies. I just didn't like it. It just made him look awkward and weird. But it's so easy to forget when you're watching this that this is a multi-billion-pound budget series. You know, it's got a lot more backing in terms of loads of writers, loads of people, production team, costume designers, actors are in. Do you know what I mean? It's just got the full. It ticks all the boxes of something that should be a natural success, but unfortunately, it's the complete opposite. And this is just one of those scenes where I looked and I thought, what the fuck is this? What am I watching? This just looks like some crap that you have to watch when you're younger. It's like 1 a.m. and you've got a really shit movie that you just put on and you don't really understand what's going on. But because you're drunk, it doesn't really matter what you're seeing. It's kind of like that. And I'm like, what the fuck? So they have a little bit of a back and forth. We then see Elrond pulling Galadriel out of the water. She then says, oh my god, where's Celebrimbor? And he's like, oh, he's over there. He's nearly finished the thing. And she's like, no. She runs off towards Celebrimbor. Halbrand's all of a sudden disappeared. Halbrand, also now known as Sauron, confirmed. Galadriel then says, we've got to make 3 rings to Celebrimbor. And Celebrimbor's like, yeah, let's do that. We can bring balance and make a weapon that Sauron knows nothing about. So Celebrimbor then says, true creation of something so pure, so powerful, i.e. the 3 elven rings, requires sacrifice. It needs gold and silver from Valinor. Now, this is the bit where I was hoping this is where they could have redeemed it. They didn't fucking do it though. It annoys me. They could have. What I was hoping was going to happen when he said it requires sacrifice, it requires something from Valinor, something pure, something of essence, jewels, etc. I was hoping Galadriel was going to get Finrod's dagger and stab herself with it. I thought she was going to kill herself, and Elrond and Celebrimbor were going to be like, "What the fuck's she doing?" And then at the end of the season, as in the closing scene, or the start of season 2, it could have been Galadriel's gone to Valinor. She's dead, right? She's killed herself. She goes to Valinor. Because of her act of sacrifice, she's remade in the light of the god, right? Or God. She's dead. She then becomes the Galadriel that we know in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So, white gown, beautiful, wise beyond her years, a fucking sorceress, casting spells, has foresight, stops the smouldering looks. This is a way they could have easily redeemed her character, but what do they fucking do? She just chucks the dagger of her brother into the forge and says, make something out of that. And it's like, oh, why? Sacrifice would have meant so much more if she would have sacrificed herself. Look at how Gandalf sacrificed himself to save the Fellowship, right? He ends up fighting the Balrog for like 4 days at the top of the highest peak of the lowest tower, yeah? So he's fighting the Balrog, kills the Balrog, but through that, he dies as well of exhaustion and everything. He dies on that mountain, yeah? He literally dies, goes to Valinor, he gets remade as Gandalf the White, and then he's wrapped in cloaks for Galadriel. She puts the white cloak on him, and she's like, have a nice fucking staff. Now you're the bollocks, basically. You're ready. You are like a walking god. They could have done that with her. They could have moved away from this weird soldier, temptress type thing, who's really annoying, pulls the same fucking faces, says the same lines, instead of spewing out absolute dialogue of shit and just like, oh, the stars are aligned and now you must tie your shoelaces, otherwise Elon Musk is going to ram his thumb up your bum. Like, you move away from all that shit. We don't need to keep having these pointless paraphrases, these pointless poems and shit. We know it's Galadriel, we know she's powerful. Instead of ramming that down our throats, make something suspenseful and meaningful happen on screen. She sacrifices herself with her brother's dagger, ends the sacrifice, ends her revenge, ends her anger, ends the current Galadriel, yeah? So she dies, goes off. Elrond and all that shit start crying. Move through the whole episode as is, and then the final scene, we see a beam of fucking light. She comes out, and then she's all white-gowned. She's got her little pearls or whatever. She comes out with the stuff that Celebrimbor then needs to make the Elven Rings. I'm like, that would have been it. That could have redeemed her character. That could have redeemed her arc. And I would have gone, holy shit. I'll take back everything that happened in this season because they purposely made her look stupid. Doing that would make it sense. It would make sense. If she comes back as Galadriel, the Lady of the Woods, like the Galadriel that we know, that we respect and everyone absolutely loves. She's not stupid. She hasn't spent all season next to Sauron and not fucking realised it. It would undo all of that because it would just click in her wisdom. It would click into the Galadriel that we know would never tolerate that shit. She's been blessed with the light of Valinor. Now it works. But no, they didn't do that. She just chucks the dagger into the fucking forge and says, there you go, you've got your gold and your silver. Make your rings, make your rings. It's like, no, it's a missed opportunity, big time. But anyway, we then see the final scenes where the stranger is with Nori. She questions him about what the cult said. She says, oh, they mentioned something about Istari. What's that? And he says it means wise one in your tongue or wizard. So confirmed, Gandalf talks about the Istari. A nice little touch. It's going to be interesting to see, one, if they're going to use the other Istari, i.e. the two blue wizards, Radagast and Saruman, or if they're just going to flesh out Gandalf for this bit, I don't know. But anyway, it ends with the stranger and Nori. Stranger now Gandalf, I'll call him Gandalf. Gandalf and Nori talking about the next phase, what's going to happen. He says he has to follow the stars. He's still committed to that. He knows that's where he needs to be. He's not quite sure why. My guess is that he's just going to end up in the right place at the right time. He's going to bump into Galadriel. She's going to give him one of the fucking rings. It's going to be terrible writing, but who knows? He might end up by Saruman. I don't know. At this point, Saruman's not evil. He's not swayed. So maybe he goes to a place where he meets the other Astari. They all just know they're all bound by this alignment of stars that they just feel the urge to pull to go and stand somewhere. Maybe that's what happens. I don't know, but I don't care either. To be honest, I don't give a shit. I'm done with this series now. So they're talking about adventure, and Gandalf says, adventures are there to be shared. Kind of pays homage to the Peter Jackson Gandalf a little bit, in that he entices Bilbo to go to the Lonely Mountain to get the treasure. And also, when he says to Frodo about leaving the Shire, about, go with your friends, it's the big world out there. And that's what Gandalf does. So he kind of pays homage to that. Nori walks back to the Harfoots, and then the Harfoot gang kind of look at Nori and say, do you know what? Your place is with him. You've got a bigger purpose now. Gives her a little backpack and says, off you go. She says her goodbyes. It takes fucking ages, and I just lost interest in it. Loads of tears. One of them says, don't piss by the river or something like that. Make sure you stay true to the path. As she's saying bye to her mum, she says, yeah, I know, mum, be safe. And then her mum's like, no, be bold, be bold. So obviously her character now, she sees that she can look after herself. She's quite happy to let Nori go with Gandalf. And she's just saying, no, be brave, be bold, go out there and make decisions, because that's what life's about. So she lets her do that. It feels like a bit of a throwback to Frodo and Bilbo, really, and the Hobbits. I personally think this story with Nori, or the Harfoots, or both, is going to culminate in Nori or the Harfoots becoming the first Hobbits. They're going to form a new tribe of people. They're going to end up in a place called Hobbiton. They'll call it Hobbiton probably by the end of season 2. Or let's name it the Shire. They'll give it some sort of illustrious fucking reason. But I think this is the origin story of the Hobbits. And I think, in a way, it's quite good because it shows how Gandalf met the first set of Hobbits. It shows why he's got such an attachment to them, and such a fondness for them. And it's kind of like a Hobbit origin story, I think. I think that's the way they're going with it. So, we'll see. So the final scenes are the stranger, Gandalf, he says to Nori, that's where we need to go. And she's like, oh, how'd you know that? How can you see? And he's like, well, the air doesn't smell so foul. There's a sweet smell on the air coming from that way. And looks at her and says, when in doubt, always follow your nose. So that's a line that came from the Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf is talking to Pippin, but also when he's talking to Frodo. They're sat in Moria, they're looking around what to do, and he says, this way. And he says, Sam says, you remember it? He goes, no, I don't remember, but the air doesn't smell as foul this way. So it's kind of a nod to that. They're trying to link in this Gandalf with the Gandalf that we see in the Peter Jackson trilogy, but not buying it. We then see Galadriel putting Finrod's dagger, so her brother, into the forge so the 3 elven rings can be made. And this is how the episode ends, basically. We get the 3 rings made here. It would have been better that she sacrificed herself, I think, and then maybe returned as a different Galadriel with the elements and the materials to make the 3 elven rings, but what the fuck do I know? Elrond then puts in a drop of mithril that he kept from Durin, which Durin allowed him to keep, and it makes a nice little friendship potion. It adds an element to the mix, and then all of a sudden there's a fire that burns within it, and mixing all the good stuff together, basically. Elrond then discovers the parchment about Helbrand. He's reading about the Southlands and the lineage, what Galadriel discovered, so now Elrond knows. But he chooses to keep his mouth shut. He doesn't say anything. And I don't understand why they didn't say anything to, one, Gil-galad, their king, right? And also Celebrimbor, the guy that Helbrand has basically befriended, learnt a lot from. So surely you would have thought they would say something. But anyway, so the 3 elven rings are being made in the background. They're then placed on the table, which is this scene here. Just after this scene, we see Sauron in a black cloak marching towards a ridge on a mountain overlooking Mount Doom. There's like black clouds encircling it, lightning starting to come down, and he's giving it the old, yeah, I'm ready. And we see him slowly walk towards Mount Doom. So that's how it ends. So in the next season, no doubt we're going to see Sauron make the 1 ring. The 3 elven rings have been made. Probably they're going to go, I think they've skipped forward a little bit, but I don't think anything makes sense in this show time-wise. I don't know if we're going to see the dwarves get their rings or the 9 get theirs. They should, really. We should see both of those, because the 9 especially become the Nazgul. They become the ring wraiths, who are the servants of Sauron. So don't know how that's going to happen, but let's just hope, guys, that they fix all the shit that went wrong, not just in this episode, but the whole season. I just didn't like it. So before we go any further, if I was to give this a rating, it's a 6 out of 10. I think that's being generous as well. If I was to strip out all the things I know about Lord of the Rings and the fact that it's Lord of the Rings and I love it so much, and I'm just trying to give an extra point somewhere as much as I can, I'd probably give it a 4 or a 5, but I'm going to give it a 6, and that's, to me, that's being really generous. Things I liked about it, I think it made total sense the stranger was Gandalf, although it was stupidly obvious. It just felt right, and I think they could have delivered it so much better. They could have fleshed it out so much better as well. But it is what it is. That aspect I liked. I liked that they went with that the stranger being Gandalf. I liked Hellbrand being Sauron. Both, by the way, guys, I called from the absolute off, so sign me up for season 2. I know what I'm fucking doing, Amazon. But is what it is. Hellbrand is confirmed as Sauron. I like that as well. I like that choice. Again, I didn't quite like the direction on how they delivered it. I think it was done ever so slightly better than how they delivered it with the stranger. All in all, colossal turd fest and a massive shit cake, and there's so many ways they could have done it better, in my opinion. Not just being a fan of the lore or fan of the books, but just as a person sat down watching a fantasy TV series, I just didn't like it. Too much time jumping, too much up and down character arcs, like Elendil. In the last episode, he was sour, he hated Galadriel, and he was doing the old... Don't know where Isildur is. We still don't know where Isildur is, by the way.
Where is he?
I don't know where he is. He found us.
He must have friends.
And he gave it the whole fuck the elves shit. And now in this episode, all of a sudden, he spent a little bit of time out on the boat with the queen, who can't fucking see. He's helped her count the 9 steps, and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I get it. You know, Galadriel knew what she was doing. Yeah. We need to respect her. Let's go and get an army. Let's go back. And it's like, what? That makes no fucking sense. If you're going to go down with that path of his character, at least stick with it. Even if it's shit, you can't then just do a complete U-turn. And I think this is the problem, guys, with this series. There's so many different directors. There's people that have got their hands in the pie in loads of different episodes, and they've all got different opinions, as they would, different ideas, different sort of suggestions and plans on how they want the show to go, how they want these characters to be. But it's so blindingly obvious, because you go from episode 1, 2, 3 are different, 4, 5, 6 massive differences, and then 7 and 8 are completely and totally different to each other again. And there's just so many people involved. There's too many directors. There's too many hands in the pie. And it's like, we just need someone. I think it was episode 6. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might have been 7. That one episode that I really liked, that I gave it quite a high rating, where it was a female director, Abigail something, I can't remember her name, but I thought she did the best out of this whole season. It was that episode that I thought was perfect. Not perfect, could have been better, but perfect enough for this series at least, Lord of the Rings. It felt very much like a Tolkien TV show that I was watching. It was the one and only episode I actually sat there, looked at it, and I thought, this feels like Tolkien, this feels like Lord of the Rings. Finally, we're going somewhere. And then all of a sudden, it fucking nosedived. And looking up sort of who was behind it, the writers and everything like that, the writers were abysmal all the way. However, I think the director held it up for that particular episode. And it's interesting that the director then changed to episode 7 or 8 and then swapped over again for the following episode. And it's like, you can't really get someone who's going to direct a show at this level to then come in and have a different person direct a different episode. It doesn't work. We saw it with Game of Thrones. It's a colossal turd fest. It's just pot luck, really, that director can come in, change it so drastically, get our expectations up, get our hopes up, and then when I saw that it was going back to the other director, I was like, no, it's going to nosedive, and it fucking did. It did. And I think that's part of the problem with this show, why it did so bad. It's not the same people running it throughout. There's different opinions, there's different plans, there's different directions, sense of what progression looks like in this show for different people. I hated Galadriel from the off. I thought she was just a smouldering piece of shit. I wanted her to die. I didn't care about her character. I didn't care about the acting. Acting was terrible. Her story itself didn't make sense. She's a fucking soldier? What? No, she should be a sorceress. She should be blasting magic out of her ass pipe. And instead, we've got some twisted horse yoga girl that's obsessed with revenge, but then in the next episode says, oh, it's not about revenge, you need to let go of revenge, don't let revenge fester in your heart, it's all about doing the right thing. And it's like, you said in the last episode, that's what you should do. That's what you're doing. But now when someone else does it, you're like, no, let me get the thesaurus out. Let me read a sentence about how the stars are aligned and how you shouldn't carry revenge in your heart. But 2 minutes after me saying this, I'm going to try and murder that guy for saying that the elves are shit. It's like, makes no sense. Makes no sense. And that's the problem with this show. It's a colossal potion of ideas that culminates to fuck all. Nothing happens. Nothing happens throughout this whole series. You find out who the stranger is. You find out who Sauron is. 3 rings are made. That is it. That is it. You guys tell me anything else that happened. Numenor doesn't fall. We don't find out much more about fucking Durin. His kind are just left behind now. We see a glimpse of the Balrog. Yeah, great. They could have fleshed that out a little bit more. The only thing I really enjoyed consistently through this show is Durin. The scenes with Durin, King Durin, and Elrond. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Great characters. I didn't like the look of Elrond. I still don't. I think they've butchered his look as a character. He looks too human. He looks too sort of High School Musical to me. Most of the elves in this series do. Arondir was okay. Gil-galad I liked the look of initially, but his character is fucking shit. They just made him out to be a greedy piece of turd. And it's like, that's not Gil-galad. That's not who he would be. That's not what he would say. But I was worried. I was worried from the off, guys. I was excited when I saw the first trailer. And as I got to episode 2 and 3, and I thought, this is going to be like this through the whole series. And unfortunately, I was right. This is one of those times I wished I was wrong. I wished that it came out, volleyed me in the nuts, and then we got something that was really enjoyable and something we could all enjoy. Fantasy fans, Lord of the Rings fans, Tolkien fans alike, we could all sit together and share something special. But this is a pile of shit. Hopefully we get something turned from shit to purity. Hopefully we get the whole from the ashes of fire shall be made. Maybe this is Narsil. Maybe Narsil, we got the shards of Narsil in our asshole in this one. But the next series is going to be the Forging of Andúril. They're going to piece everything together. They're going to make a perfect product, and we're going to feel good as new by season 2. Pigs might fly, right? I know, but there we go. That's my opinion anyway, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think I've been a bit harsh on the series or the episode? Let me know your thoughts. If you did enjoy it, let me know as well. And also, are you looking forward to season 2? Do you want to see something revamped? I really do. I want a whole feng shui on this motherfucker. I want it to be revamped from the ground up. Different director. Let's fucking sort Galadriel's character out. Let's sort Gil-galad out. Let's pay homage to the budget that we've got. We've got some good actors. When they're given the right material, they can act quite well. I personally think you need to scrap the Galadriel character, or at least completely revamp the way she acts, because she's irritating as fuck. Harfoots need to go. But if we've just got to deal with Nori, that's okay, as long as it's done correctly. There's just so much to fix and piece together for season 2, unfortunately. But hopefully, if the stars align, it might happen. But there we go, guys. Unfortunately, I am very glad that the Rings of Power is done for the wrong reasons. I want it to be over now. I've had enough. Overall, if I was to give the whole season a rating, it's probably a 4, maybe a 5. It's average at best. It's below average most of the time for various reasons. I could go into detail about why I hate it so much, but I'm just done. I'm out of gas with this one. I've taken my foot off the pedal, and I'm not going to be reviewing season 2 unless loads of people want it, but there we go. But anyway, thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully, we're going to get some more fun, continue with the House of the Dragon series, so stay tuned for that one. Colossal show, doing really, really well. I'm loving it. Stay tuned for that one, guys, which is going to be coming over the next couple of days. And stay tuned to the channel. I will see you again very, very soon. Take care. Peace.